died. Because that happened a lot in my last presentation. No, let's figure it out.
That's when I got all the keychains.
Am I recording? I've got my phone. You can set it somewhere. Oh, sure. Yeah.
I could also send you a copy if you wanted.
You can send me a copy. That would be wonderful.
I don't know if whatever you want to do. It's
Yeah.
good.
If you send me a copy. That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, I'll get your information because I think she wanted to talk to you about something.
All right. So we are about to get started. Oh, dang it. No, I don't want to update my computer. Anyway. All right. So, hopefully all of you are in the right place. That this title of this looks familiar. If it doesn't, maybe just stay anyway. Maybe you'll have a good time. We'll start to like each other. That'll be fun. Hopefully we'll get some people maybe coming in and we can talk and attract more people into here maybe. But my name is Will Nation. I am a student at Texas Women's University. I also have my colleague Sean here. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Sean Mondragon. I'm a master's student in counseling and depth psychology and fellow counselor with Will here, also a meditation teacher. And a lot of my research and my graduate studies have been centered around things like perception, attention, memory research, and general personality and counseling.
All right. Yeah, so some of you have seen me before one of these things, so I'm not going to go through all my thing, but I'm a PhD student in counseling and psychology. I do research in anime-adjacent topics, which is really bad on this university for trying to give me a PhD for that kind of thing, but just fingers crossed nobody tells them until I get done, so we'll do that. But I've done a lot of different things, and Sean and I have been collaborating on this stuff for a little while now. We work together, and this panel is all about using techniques that we use in our pretty much everyday life, would you say? Everyday life, as psychology and counseling people, and bring that here to help us understand how we can talk about characters and what we can talk about and how we can learn. Because the thing is, I know that you've had that conversation with somebody where you're like, this is my favorite show, and they go, I haven't seen it, and then just stare at you, right? Well, we're going to solve that problem today because we're going to do something a little bit different. So we'll go through this a little bit here. So this came out of, I talk about Evangelion because it's like my favorite anime and it's on Netflix now, so none of you have any excuses, by the way, anymore. I know, it's a new dub. We're going to feel sad about it, but it's fine. It's on Netflix now. Say again? The manga is also good, although I have not finished it, full disclosure, so. But yeah, so I've had a lot of talks about this, and especially if you talk about anime that has layers and ideas and junk in it, you're gonna get to those conversations where people are like, okay, because they're not gonna know what you're talking about, right? And especially if you haven't seen the same stuff as people, that's gonna be hard. So the idea here is that the ability to describe this and to have these conversations in a different way might help us learn some stuff and make some connections between people, right? Also, this is a skill that is very used in our field, but not everywhere. So we do it once a week at least, in a big meeting with everybody there. But this is something that usually once you get out of training, nobody does it anymore. And it's a shame because it's a really cool skill, it's a cool idea. So we'll do that. Also, I did just have to win a lot of arguments, and people had to sit and listen to me a lot. So I had to come up with a way for them to make that easier for them, right? So this is where we're gonna go on. So what we're talking about is called case conceptualization in psychology. And I didn't write this. This is someone's definition. And I'm not even going to attempt to read that to you. And I would suggest that you don't even attempt to read it either. I just copied and pasted it, to be very honest with you. That's really long and complicated. That's like a 2-paragraph explanation of what I'm trying to talk to you about and trying to give you the Cliff Notes version. So this is not super useful, but this is the very technical definition. But let's do better than that. So the idea here is that when we do a case conceptualization, all we're doing is making a report on stuff that we've seen, right? So we have information that we gather. We have things we see if we work with them in therapy or if we do an assessment or something like that. But the idea here is we're going to use that to explain our behaviors. So if I'm working with somebody by a client or Sean as a client, I'll say, they said this to me. this explains that, right? And we as counselors or therapists or psychologists, we look for a lot of specific things here. Some of that can be stuff that people tell you. That's obvious, right? But some of it can be things they don't tell you, like if they look a certain way when they're in their sessions with you, or if they do something special, or they don't say something, can be important information as well. So we take all of these things in here with the idea that this is supposed to make the relationship with your client better. And in this case, it's supposed to make our understanding of the content better, and our relationship with each other better, is the hope. So, there's sort of three pieces here that in our field, what we look at is to say, okay, how do we understand our clients? Because we need to understand, right? You ever try to talk to somebody who doesn't quite get it? Are they going to be able to help you that much? Well, maybe not, right? The other thing is, what things need to be addressed? So sometimes people will come in and say, doctor, I'm sad. They don't call me doctor, I'm not actually a doctor. But you're like, I'm sad. I'm like, obviously, then we'll address that. But sometimes people don't know what it is, right? They're like, well, something's wrong. Okay, well, what's wrong? Well, something. That's not useful, right? So we gotta figure that out. And where we come from as people inform our goals, inform what we want to do with this. Because all of us come from different places. And they use this to say clinical wise, but we all have different life backgrounds, we all have different things, and that might give us some different information about what to do with this, what to do when we're talking. So, this has three components. This can be very easy for you. You don't have to remember all three of them because they'll be here in the presentation several times. But there's three pieces that you gotta remember for this. The first one, what do you see? So if we're talking about a character, what do you literally see them do in the show you're talking about, or the manga, or whatever, right? That's the first one, it's easy enough. The second one, how do you understand that? Now this is a little bit more open to interpretation, right? Because if you and I saw the same two things, would we think about them the exact same way? Well, maybe not, right? So how do you understand what's going on? That might be a place where we maybe disagree or have different ideas. And the third one is, what can we do with this information? Right? So what would you want to see happen? How do you want to see it change? What do you want to see that character do in the future? And this is kind of cheating if a show's gone on for a long time, because you might see that happen and be like, yeah, I was vindicated. They did the thing I wanted. But, what do you want to see happen? So we're going to go through this, and Sean and I are going to do an example here. But the expectation is that once you guys feel comfortable that you've picked this up, just participate as much as you feel comfortable doing. So if you have an idea, say that. If you have an idea for a character of what we want to talk about, let's do that. Because they have to have seen the show. Yeah. We don't have to have seen the show, which is great. Because Sean might not have seen anything that we're talking about. I might not have seen something that you're talking about. And the best part is when we work together, I don't see Sean's clients. Rarely, I would say. Very rarely. I don't see his clients, he doesn't see my clients, and yet we have to talk about them, right? So if you have something and you're like, here's this thing, and none of us have seen it, the best part is we're going to be able to have the conversation. So keep that in mind.
And two of the most important things to keep in mind when going through this or two of the biggest skills are our empathy and watching our projections. Whenever we're looking at these different characters and asking these questions about what we're seeing and what we're possibly being able to explain and understand what's going on, we want to be able to really understand what projections from our own life we're putting forward onto there, if they really belong there. A lot of times these snap judgments can pop up that we really have to pay attention to and question a little bit. But then furthermore, the most important thing is how far can we develop our empathy? How far can we develop ourselves to really see the perspective of the character that we're working with? Some characters that we see, the ones that we love and cherish, they can be really easy to get on the good side with. But sometimes some of the darker characters or some of the more villainous characters can be really difficult to put ourselves in that place of empathy and ask, hey, where is this guy's dark side really coming from? And that's when we can start looking at some of the defenses that come into play. And that's one of the big pieces that explains some of the different aspects that are going on in some of these characters.
For sure. And spoilers, I put a lot of characters that people hate in this presentation. So we're gonna have fun with that. You all can put in I want to talk about the protagonist of the show. We'll do that. But I literally searched complicated or misunderstood anime characters and then just put them in here. So I also cheated and put things I like because it's my panel, but our panel. Yeah. So you had to know this was coming. So we're gonna talk about Shinji from Evangelion. notoriously disliked by almost everyone that watches Evangelion. Right? Fair? You've seen it? You've seen the show? Anyone actually like him as a character? Okay, that's better than I expected, right? The thing is, like, Shinji's, what, like 14? And, like, that was a tough time for everybody, right? That no one did 14 well, right? If you did, write a book, please. But we're going to talk about this. You knew this was coming. So, Shinji and Evangelion, we see a lot of things. I'm not going to necessarily spoil the show for you, but I will tell you, like, things generally that happen. So one of the things we see a lot of is depression, anxiety, fear out of this kid, right? So his friends die. Straight up, that happens in the show, right? People are supposed to, it's a thing you feel sad about sometimes, right? Hopefully. Yeah. Anxiety, right? He gets told to do Anxiety, he gets told to do things, he's not able to do them because he can't. He can't make himself do the things that he's supposed to do. Now, granted, the things that he's supposed to do are a little bit different for some people, like getting a robot and save the world is a little bit different than, like, go to school.
Mildly different standards.
A little bit, right? But also there's a lot of fear, right? He gets confronted with sometimes his greatest fears on the routine. Hey, do this. You might die doing it. Now, if you remember when you were like 14 or 15, thinking about your own imminent death was not a thing you were probably in the habit of, unless you were one of those kids, which is okay, but it's a little bit different, right? And to put it mildly, he has social and family life strain. So Shinji's dad is his boss in Evangelion, kind of, if you've seen it, right? And his dad's not like a nice person, like at all. Like, his love is exclusively tied to whether you get in the robot and save the world. Which, if it only was so easy to get our parents to love us, right? I wish. But there's a lot of conflict here. And the only people he has associations with, a lot of them are really sketchy people. He has like a direct superior who's like drunk all the time and he lives with her and it's like wildly inappropriate, the things that they do. Yeah, it's not great. He also like goes to high school and has like friends, except some of them are also giant robot pilots who may or may not also die. So it's a lot of stuff going on. So there's that. There's also severe distress. Multiple times in the show, Shinji breaks down. There's multiple times he gets told to do something and he can't. He also does a lot of sketchy, really questionable things that are not family friendly that I cannot talk about in this panel. But, you know, if you've seen it, you know. Also, he refuses to do his job routinely. Now, of course, his job is get into robot and save world, but like, in a world in which that's your job and otherwise people die, it's kind of significant that he doesn't do it, right? Now, of course, most people are just like, well, just get in the robot. What's your problem? It's fair, right? That's his job. But these are the things we're seeing, right? He is a basket case. He is unable to function a lot of the time in regular life. He desperately seeks people to tell him what to do and to help him out. And the thing is, most people aren't super useful in this world for that. So these are things we see. So this is the part where we can all get into here. So I'm going to tell you how I understand this. All the things I've seen from this character tell me that he has a problem attaching to other people. And this can suck because his mom is dead. Kind of. Mostly. He has one dead parent and one absent, non-loving parent. That's hard. You grow up through a very important time in your life without those figures, those people that you attach to and that are supposed to love you and teach you things. That's going to mess you up. Also, a lot of us, we get those figures not from family, but like friends or mentors. He also has really sketchy mentors. His greatest mentor is drunk on the floor half the time. She owns a penguin. I don't know what that's about. She has some problems. She makes like sexual advances at him. That's not great. You don't want that in an attachment figure, right? Or maybe you do, but that's like a down the line sort of a adult.
It's definitely something to talk about.
And maybe it's something, yeah, maybe it's something to talk about.
I'm definitely hearing a lot of aspects of Shinji here coming out that obviously really play to this role of not being able to have close relationships that are really put into a healthy light. When his relationships do start to get a little bit close, what kind of reactions does he have? What sort of things come up for him?
Some of that I can't share in this panel, but some of it is a lot of fear or a lot of questions about what that's like. So for example, if I care about this person, what will happen to them? Or what does it mean for them to care about me? And there's a lot of guardedness around like, I can't handle if something were to happen to them.
There's a lot of loss and a lot of potential for loss. So why even get close to anybody?
True, yeah. And especially if the only examples you have are like your dad doesn't love you, and like pretty blatantly tells him that at one point in the show, like not great. Yeah, like if the people that are supposed to love you don't, why try to make anyone love you at all?
And this
Right?
father figure's putting out there once his mother has questionably passed away.
Questionably.
I'm going to go ahead and shut off myself from the world emotionally whatsoever in any way, and of course Shinji seems to be taking that on as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's also fair to mention too. Yeah, it's also fair to mention that he sort of lives in a post-apocalypse. Like, the world could end at any really given moment, and it could kind of be his fault too, which is not something you really want to think about, right? Like, you don't want to be the hero that failed to save the world. That's
Just a little bit.
right? Part of this too, I think we're also looking at a normative trauma response, right? If you've been hurt, if you've been traumatized, breaking down sometimes is expected, right? Breaking down, having problems, getting close to people, looking for love in the wrong places maybe, or not knowing how to love people the right way. And I say love people in the non-physical sort of that, but fill in the blanks if you feel comfortable. But doing those kind of things feels normal, right? Especially if you're a young person who's been traumatized. If you've had a lot of time to process it and get over it, that makes a difference. He doesn't have that. It happened all recently. It was like it was yesterday. And sometimes in the show, it was yesterday. So there's that piece of it too. So given this understanding, I'm going to tell you what I think should happen here. So one of the things I think is someone should desperately sit Shinji down and say, like, how do you even understand your own life? Because the thing is, like, if you were to tell somebody this, you're like, okay, so I go to high school like a normal kid. Yeah, okay. And I have friends, right? And sometimes they die in giant robot battles. Wait, what? Right? How does he make sense of this? Because this would be important. Because if he goes, my life is terrifying and I can't deal with it. Yeah, okay, we could figure that out, right? But also, like, what if he's immune to it, right? What if he's totally closed off until the time where he breaks down and he's like, I try not to think about it. Like, well, yeah, I wouldn't either, right? I wouldn't think about all of those things. So I think that's part of it. The other one is he desperately needs an authority and attachment figure who has appropriate boundaries, right? So he needs a mentor to like care about him, but not in a sketchy way. Someone to tell him how to live life, not like, okay, here's how you get life. Get girls. Like, no, stop, bad, right? Someone to desperately teach him the lessons that your dad or your mom would teach you as an adolescent. Like, have different conversations with you about what you should do and how you become a person worthy of love and trust and value and all that, right? He desperately needs that person. He does not have that person in Evangelion the show, arguably, depending on how you like. It would be great if someone would just sit there and talk to him and actually listen to him at one point, not be like, okay, cool, I heard what you just said, but also shut up, right? Because that happens a lot in this show. And a lot of like talking over him. Like, Shinji, you're kind of a dumbass. Just sit there and just don't do anything, right? Don't do anything, just do what we tell you, right? So there's that piece. So that's what I would say here. Anybody else have ideas or thoughts or comments or stuff to go here? Or else we can move on to our next example, and then eventually we'll get to the point where we will take ones from you all here. So, give people like that old secondary. Yeah, go for it.
I think like Shinji, he kind of like shows like lots of signs of trauma as the show progresses.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of thread about the shows itself that way. Because the first few episodes of the show are pretty contained. They're pretty normative anime fare. And the longer you get on in the show, the more dark and jacked it gets. And like the last episodes are just like completely metaphysical banana sandwich crazy. Which is great. But also, yeah, like I think Shinji shows that trauma the longer the show goes on. Also, it's worth mentioning that he probably gets more traumatized as the show goes on, right? So if we were talking about like beginning of the show versus end of the show, we'd probably have a very different conversation, right? For any character and for the show as a whole, right? Although understanding of it might change as we watch the show more, for sure. Any thoughts, Sean, or you want to move on? All right. So I'm going to cheat and also use one from a show I've watched fairly religiously. Toradora, anyone? Woohoo! Yeah. one of the greatest shows ever made by humans. I suggest you watch it if you haven't. But the premise of the show, Toradora, if you haven't seen it, is there's a young girl who is extremely unlikable and terrifying, and a young man who is scary and people don't like him because he looks like a delinquent and all of this, right? But he's a genuinely nice person. She's mostly nice, deep on down on the inside in that way that prickly people are sometimes. But they have this associate, Ami, who is, let me describe to you her whole life history because this is going to be fun for me. She's an idol, kind of. She's like a model. She's like extremely successful and like attractive and everyone likes her. And she's also a normal high school student because anime. Yeah. So she goes to their high school and she transfers in, and then she's like this wonderful, cute, like everyone, angelic personality. Except the thing is that she's not actually that way. If you've seen the show, she is deeply unpleasant as a human being. And she's the kind of person that will like say mean things internally until she says them externally. And so multiple times tells one of the main characters how it is. Like, look, you two are like this. You guys are dumb. Do this. Right? And just deeply unpleasant. Insults people, says mean things all the time. But she has this very pronounced split between how people perceive her, right? Everybody else thinks she's this wonderful, kind human being who's talented, good at school, athletic, all these things. And in reality, she's this deeply unpleasant person that people wouldn't want to be around, right? And so there's that split that gets played out. And people tell her that, like, wow, you're really unpleasant. And those are the only people that she actually is that way to, right? So most people think she's this great person. Which causes interpersonal difficulties throughout the show, right? She gets into conflict with the main characters repeatedly because she will tell them, hey, you're dumb, do this, and call them names and do things like that, right? But this is also part of it, she hides herself from other people. And she has a character that she has romantic feelings for in the show. And she pretends to be this character, this person that she isn't throughout the entire show. And the thing is, the guy that she likes knows. He is real aware that she is this deeply unpleasant person and actually wants to be around her. I know, it's weird, right? You could be unpleasant, people can still like you, right? She's deeply unpleasant and hides herself from other people, and which is great, except then you have to deal with those expectations and pretend to be someone that you aren't, which is something that becomes a conflict later on in the show. It keeps you isolated from people. If you try to pretend to be somebody else for a long time, eventually you're not going to be able to pretend anymore. That's hard. Also, if you're yourself, that's a lot easier. Now, of course, some people might not like you for who you are, but those people can jog on, right? We all have people that don't like us, that's fine. But this kind of becomes a problem because she pretends and pretends and pretends and then can't be real with people, right? Also, in the words of the main character, she is, in the English dub, a stupid chihuahua. That is what she gets called throughout the entire series. They don't really use her name very much. That character doesn't at least. But this creates a situation where she's alienated from people. She's cut off and still has to pretend, still has to do all these things, but really can't make those meaningful connections that we would really want, right? Anyone seen the show? Want to add something else to this? Or feel like I did an okay job here?
One of the interesting aspects that comes up with her has to do, we can turn a little bit towards depth psychology for it, is this aspect of this split that comes up in that perception. On one hand, she has this wonderful, immaculate light aspect that everyone's seen as this wonderfully positive person and this beautiful expectation, but then there's this very dark shadow aspect that comes out in her day-to-day personality of who she really is and who she really brings forward. As all that light aspect kind of gets projected onto her, all those darker pieces, that light casts a shadow inside of her, and that shadow wants somewhere to live and somewhere to come out, and so she brings that out in her day-to-day life in these ways where the public doesn't quite see, but is that reflection of what's coming from that light and that expectation that's put onto her, and that exercising of what's hidden.
Yeah, and I think that the piece about like it needs to come out, it does come out, is a thing, right? Because the more you try to suppress it, the more it might show up somewhere, and maybe show up in a place you don't want to, right? What if you're talking to your crush and you accidentally say something super cruel, right? Because we've all been there, right? What if that happens? What if it leaks out and you're like, oh, uh-oh, I'm not this person, right? Or are you? I don't know. It's a good point though. Let's go to part 2 here. So this is an actual quote from the sub version, because I watched the sub version because I'm not a communist like the rest of you. I'm just kidding. Subs and dubs are fine. It's whatever. Do you. But in the sub version, one of her lines translated is, "Behold, foolish mortals, for I will allow you to grovel in my angelic presence and worship me." She doesn't say this out loud. It's an internal line. But this is, weirdly, during the scene where they're taking the swim test, they're all like swimming in PE class. And like, she an idol, so like, she's obviously like the hottest one. Right? And so like is very aware of this fact and like is gonna tell people that they have to worship her for her beauty, right? Which I don't know, I didn't make any friends with that line when I tried it, but maybe you guys will have better results. You know, you go in and tell people to worship you and see how that goes. Report back, let me know. But when I see this character, when I'm watching this show, one of the things I understand is this is an inauthenticity with yourself and with others, right? If you can't be honest with yourself, you're gonna have a really hard time being honest with other people, right? Because if you can't tell yourself the truth about who you are definitely not gonna be able to tell other people the truth. The thing is, they might find out able to share that with them. And the more you pretend, the more you put distance between yourself and other people, the less you're gonna be connected to them, right? You ever have one of those things like you wanna date this person, so you pretend to like running, but you don't like running, right? I mean, you can do that, and like you can pretend to like fitness all you want, but like if you don't actually like fitness, eventually that's gonna get hard, and you're gonna not have things to talk about because you're just pretending, right? You're just trying to, and not instead of doing. Also, she's kind of refusing to accept part of the things that are given in life. So parts of the things that are given in our lives, we all have to deal with. We all have to make meaning out of our lives, right? We all have to deal with this. We all have to deal with that. We have to find that line between connection and disconnection. She's not doing that very well. She's like, well, I'll just lie and people will like me, which might be true. But in this case, it causes problems because people confront her and say, why don't you just be the person you actually are? I would like that person more. And that's tough because if you get the feedback like, I'm pretending to be this likable person and people don't like me, or people don't really know me, that can be very difficult, right? The other thing here is that she has really good insight, and you can see this in a lot in people that like have good out insight but not in insight. That was a bad way of saying that, but I don't know the words to say that would be. But you know, you ever met that person who like can see other people cut right to their core, but like aren't honest with themselves? That's her. She goes up to other characters and makes observations about their lives. Hey, you know, you two are like ridiculously in love with each other, right? And they're like, no. Spoilers, that's the case, they are. She goes and tells people, like, you know you want this thing, why don't you go get it? But of course then if you turn that self-reflection around on her, she's like, no, I would never do that. I don't know what you're talking about, right? So she can give it but not take it, and that's an important point here. If she had the same insight she had for other people, to herself, she would probably live a much easier life. Now, people might find her unpleasant sometimes, but that would be okay, because she's like, well, I'm just this person. That's okay, right? So given all the things we've talked about, does that feel right to you all? Do you have different ideas? Things that might, you know, maybe people you knew, or people, different ways you would think about this? Because there aren't any invalid versions here, right? Go for it.
Narcissism.
Narcissism, say more.
Just that, like, whatever she does, she can't, is perfect. And she can't do any wrong.
Yeah, right? And if you are that way, right, your self-perception tends to be pretty brittle. If you're shown that you can't do it, that's going to be a problem, right?
You know, one of the primary defenses psychologically for a narcissist is extreme devaluation and extreme looking at saying, I am absolutely perfect, or you are absolutely perfect, or you are absolutely terrible. Everything is always a really great or really, really terrible side. Extreme devaluation and an idealization. So are there any ways in which she extremely devaluates situations or people around her, or extremely infantilizes and inflates the things around her?
Yeah, and I think that polarity there can be really important of like, everyone is above me, or everyone is beneath me, I am above everybody, I'm the greatest. Maybe, right? But often that's not the case, and also that's not really an attitude people tend to love. Yeah. And that's the thing that gets brought up in the show a couple times. People are like, man, you think you're really better than everybody, and you're kind of not, right? Yeah, that's a good point. So what I would talk about here, and what I think maybe would be useful here, part of that is just social skills, right? Don't talk to people like that. It doesn't really go very well. I haven't tried it a lot, but like the limited exposure I have is don't do that. So like social skills, how do you be, maybe less than pleasant, but like in a good way? Because anyone know that friend who's like real blunt and like says whatever they mean, but like most of the time it's okay, right? You can be that person. You can say those like cutting kind of incisive things in ways that are kind to people. You can be nicer to people. That's part of it. The other thing is you have to work on getting her to accept herself and then expressing that self to other people, right? And this actually could be in the show because the character that she's in love with already understands who she is as a person and accepts her. Now, whether he wants to be in a romantic relationship with her is probably not the case, right? But if you have somebody who is willing to look you dead in the face and be like, man, you are unpleasant sometimes. Like, gosh, do I like you, right? That's going to go a long way. Because there are other people in the world, trust me, that are like that. No matter how unpleasant you are, although there is a bell curve. If you become too unpleasant, then it's hard. But if you have these habits and people can like you and express their admiration for you for those things, that's going to go a long way. And if people can say, hey, that thing you said to me was pretty dead on. I really appreciate your insight. Getting positive feedback about the things she thinks are negative would go a long way here, right? Disentangling some of the like bad behavior from bad view of self, right? Might be an important thing, right? And I think maybe if the show went on longer, if there was like a million more episodes, you would see maybe some of those things, right? But unfortunately it didn't, so that's life. But there you go. Any other thoughts, concerns, questions, ideas? Things you might want to see here? Or if someone you know is like this, hypothetically things you would want them to do, right? All right, so we're going to move on to doing one collaboratively here. And I've chosen one that's kind of an easy softball for people because everyone's seen this, or if you haven't, you've seen it somehow. The Prince of All Saints. There's a lot of material here because, again, the show's been like 20 years now, more.
How many reboots?
Depending on how, yeah. It's a long time. There's like 3 different shows that we're going to talk about here. And if you haven't seen all of it, that's okay. So, what do we see from Vegeta as a character, right? What does he do in the context of Dragon Ball Z and Super, right? What does he do? What is his persona?
Anger issues.
Anger issues. Yeah, he does this thing where he like yells and like those veins like bulge out on his head a bunch.
Just a little bit volatile.
He has some anger problems. He just sometimes kills people just for funsies. Not really a good anger management thing. Yeah.
Very narcissistic and very proud of his own race.
Very narcissistic and very proud of his own race, possibly up until racism, we might be able to say. Like, all races are lesser, even though hypothetically in the Dragon Ball universe, Saiyans kind of suck.
How dare you?
I know, I'm sorry. Look, I'm just saying, the fact that they can get almost killed a bunch and get back to life is really cool, but also it creates a power continuum in which you have to get almost killed a bunch of times, but not killed, which is great, but also a lot of a difficult way to live if you don't have good medical technology, right? Yeah, he's very fiercely proud of himself and of the Saiyans, even when there aren't any left, right? He's like the Prince of All Saiyans, which doesn't mean anything if there's 4 of them, by the way. He's very fiercely proud of himself. He is going to be the legendary Super Saiyan. He is going to defeat everyone and take revenge on Frieza and so on and so forth, yes? Yeah, right? Those things. A lot of that going on.
He's extremely competitive.
He's extremely competitive, right? With specific people, right? Goku, who doesn't even call by his actual, well, he doesn't call by his, depending on how you want to think about it. But yeah, he's fiercely competitive. He has to be the strongest character. And I don't know how much you've seen of Dragon Ball or Z or Super. Is Vegeta ever really the strongest character in those shows? Pretty rarely, right? I would say like maybe 15% of the time, Vegeta's like on top, and the rest of it is like Goku came up with some ridiculous new idea he came up with, and now he's awesome with Goku cheating. Anyway, depending on how you feel about Goku versus Vegeta arguments, right? But yeah, fiercely competitive. He has to be the strongest, and he has to defeat the big bad and do all these things. And he rarely does that either, right? Fair point. Yeah. Other things you see.
I think
Go for it.
I was gonna say, like, I think a lot of his anger issues come from the fact that his race was destroyed by
sure.
Frieza, and that like that fall, maybe that whatever depression that it fell him into, maybe manifested as anger, and then as a power, like a seeking the power.
Yeah, so if I'm a narcissist and I think that I am great and my race is great and everything is wonderful and we are the best, and all of a sudden everybody gets destroyed, my whole race gets broken down and we get pretty much devalued. Now I've got to do something to overcome that. I've got to show, no, I am great, I am super powerful. So that anger comes forward as a defense to go ahead and push all that other danger away and say, no, I'm good, I am the best, and everything else needs to keep away from me.
Yeah, and I think your point was very good to say, I think a lot of people, and maybe you don't want to raise your hand for this one, but like if everyone you love got murdered, I think you would probably feel sad about that at some point, right? You would be like, wow, this is deeply traumatic, this is sad. Feeling depressed would be a pretty normal reaction to that, right? And Vegeta never really expresses that in the context of the show, right? He doesn't express those like vulnerable emotions, but he does express anger. And anger is a real good way to have control over that, right? I don't feel sad, I feel angry. I'm not gonna get sad, I'm gonna get even, right? And like, I don't know if you can get even also because genocide, but you know. Also, worth mentioning, Vegeta like commits a genocide in the show. Maybe, I don't know their like demographics, the weird bug people. He destroys the bug planet, right? He and Nappa are like chilling, going to Earth, are in a weird Instagram filter kind of a world, and they just like destroy it from orbit because, I don't know, they were gross or they didn't like them. So like, as a person whose entire race and planet was destroyed, he then goes and does that to somebody else. Which like, if you become a decent person later, ooh. Like, you ever been on a first date or third date and you're like, let me tell you about the things I've done. You're like doing that thing where you talk about the dark stuff in your closet, but you just like, hold on, I killed a planet once. Yeah, like, actually don't think I want to let you around the kids now anymore. Man, it's harsh. There's a hand up there. Someone got something? Go for it.
Okay, Dad.
He is an okay dad. That's a good point. Now, depending on which version of Dragon Ball you watch, or Dragon Ball Z, or if you watch Abridged, which is funny, but not necessarily accurate to the context of the show. Yeah, he's arguably like, what, second best dad in the show? Because the best dad in the show is Piccolo, obviously.
Yeah.
Duh. Come on. Don't hate him. Piccolo's the greatest dad. Of course he like, you know, fires laser beams at children, but you know what do you do? It's Dragon Ball Z, it's fine. But Vegeta's like an okay dad, right? Now, of course, it takes his like future son coming back and like becoming a Super Saiyan to like, hey dad. You know, that's a weird one, but he's actually okay as a dad. He's also kind of okay as a partner for someone who probably, and I'm conjecturing at this point because we don't know this information, but it was probably like a wham bam, thank you ma'am, one night stand kind of a situation with Bulma. He actually like becomes a partner to her and like cares. Like he fights God because God insulted her one time, which like, ladies, gentlemen, find you that. Right? Go for it.
Well, I just want to make the comment, like they're probably really good partners because like they're both very, very independent.
For sure, yeah.
And so like they just don't need to like be around each other like all that much, and like they, whenever they're working out something, they can go off on their own and be like secure in the knowledge that the other is gonna stick around or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a compatibility element there of like, we have similar styles or something, right?
Like, as we talked about, he is very closed off to vulnerability. And if you're seeking help from someone, that's being very vulnerable. But if they're both able to not have to seek each other for vulnerability, just handle their own stuff, it creates a pretty compatible environment for the two of them.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe like long term, we would maybe take issue with that. Like they would need to go talk to somebody about, you know,
Eventually,
use I feel statements and stuff, right? But yeah, that's a good point. Also, I would make the point that both Bulma and Vegeta are like high achieving as people. Like Bulma's one of the smartest people on planet Earth, full stop. Like she invents stuff that like shouldn't be inventable. She's like, oh, I made this time machine. Time machines don't exist. you made that up. Like her dad owns like what, like the Google equivalent, I guess. It's not a Google equivalent. It's more like a GE, like.
Yeah, General Electric.
Her dad is like the founder of like one of the most ubiquitous corporations. They can make like houses that fit in a thing this big. Like it's ridiculous, right? But they're both high achieving. Maybe that's part of it, right? You push each other. You go like, okay, you got to be the best at this because I'm the best at this, right? So there's maybe some compatibility there as well, right? That's some stuff we've seen, right? I think we got most of that. So how do we understand what Vegeta does? We've gotten some into this right now, but like based on what we observe, how do we make sense of him as a character, as a person? What does he do? What is he about? What's his problem?
He's about becoming the strongest.
He's about becoming stronger, right? He's all about progress. I have to do better, be better. And like he knows that in ways that like you'll see him go into a fight and get stomped. And he might know he's gonna go into that fight and get stomped. And he still does it and he still comes out of it at the other end, right? Most of the time. So yeah, he's about getting stronger and he's willing to do anything to do that, right? Makes sense, right? Why does he want to get stronger though? What's the end goal? What's the job?
To beat Goku.
To beat Goku, right? Kakarot, you know. Gotta beat that guy, like show him I'm the greatest, right? That's part of it. For a while in the series, there's a different one though. What's his goal?
Oh, to beat Frieza.
Beat Frieza, right? Get revenge. Frieza exterminated my whole family and mostly whole family, whole race, planet, right? I have to be strong enough to defeat the strongest person in the universe, right? Because Frieza was, at one point, the strongest person in the universe, arguably. How else do we understand stuff that goes on for him? Go for it.
Well, he's the principal Saiyan. Part of the anger issues there is definitely frustration that it's like, all right, I'm supposed to be the best of my entire species, and I keep losing to this dumbass. How does that happen?
Yeah, and there's actually that thread in the show, right? Goku is like the equivalent of like a poor person, I guess, in Planet Vegeta society. Like he's like a low-ranking warrior. Like he's not really anything. And if Vegeta, and they come from a hierarchy, I'm sure that's a monarchy and all that business, but if he's like this, if he's supposed to be the biggest, baddest, greatest thing, and he's supposed to be high class, and then like some random idiot beats you at everything all the time, right? You have to avenge yourself on that. You have to show that you're this social person, this excellent, thing. Yeah, so there's maybe part of that, of like, I have to show that I am who I am. And I think that's a valid point, because if he says who he is the prince of all Saiyans, and he's the greatest warrior who ever lived, and he constantly can't show you that because he loses, that could be problematic, right? Go home and think about that one.
I get a little angry over that.
Might be a little angry, right? You might get so angry your hair turns a different color and then grows and you lose your eyebrows. Weird. You grow a tail again. Ever been that angry? I haven't. But
Just another note, like he is focusing that anger on becoming better, and after after the whole like Frieza, it's just about becoming better than Kakarot. It's not necessarily about killing Goku.
Yeah, sure. He doesn't necessarily try to murder Goku after a point in the series, right? That phase gets over with.
So he's kind of like focusing that anger in a healthy way, a way.
I think you can make that argument that rivalry is a much healthier way to express anger than like trying to murder whole planets, right? I think it's a good point, right? It's a different relationship that he's defined by. He is defined by his relationship partially to Goku, right? I have to chase after him, I have to surpass him. But it also doesn't involve like necessarily humiliating or harming or destroying him, which is important. Let's go back and then forward. Is that good? There you go.
The main motivation for me of becoming a family was because I'm the best for the Saiyan race. Like, I got the best woman on earth. That's my prize.
Yeah.
I want my best son. I want my son to be the best future Saiyans in the future. So that's why he probably so caring for them. Because he wants the best of them. Because he wants the best things for our time.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point too, of like extending greatness out and saying like I want to be better so they can be better, but also like wanting to be better for that relationship, that planet that he lost, the race of people that were lost, right? He can invest in the future and not be concerned about the past. Is a really interesting point, I think.
I think you also see him kind of move from being selfish to like fighting for others also. Because in a lot of the fights against really big odds like Broly or Cell,
Sure.
he's kind of afraid in the end to fully commit. But he does eventually like sacrifice himself or, you know, kind of commit to the team effort of being that person. And you kind of see him like become more of like, you know, part of the team rather than being by his own. So.
Yeah, and he becomes part of the team, and that's an important point too. Of like, a lot of times early on when he's like sort of being a good guy, or like they team up grudgingly, he gets that like tsundere thing going on. Where like, don't think I like you, Baka, kind of a situation, which is like whatever. But or it's like, well, this guy's gonna murder us if we don't team up, so I guess we should team up, right? But by the end of the series, or as the series has gone on, you see more like, okay, we both have to do this. We have to go whole hog into this, even if we're scared, even if, right? And he's doing it for the right reasons, one would argue. Even if it's to not die and have not have your family die, I would say that's a pretty good reason. Yeah.
And then on that note, eventually he's actually able to fuse with Kakarot Goku. Eventually he gets over that, and I watched the movie for that. He was not happy, but he's like, well, we gotta do it if we want to win. Okay, I'll do it.
Yeah, and that's a good one. I think you're the first person who's ever brought up fusion in relation to Vegeta, so like, well done. But that's like metaphysical AF, right? Like, you become the same person. He has to give himself over fully to being half of a person with the person that he despises the most for a lot of the series. And they have to become a person. And most of the time it's like dire straits, like the universe ends if we don't do this, which fair, right? But that's huge. Because if you didn't want to be, if you weren't able to be that vulnerable, the fusion wouldn't work, right? Most, depending on how you do it, the dance part, you have to do it that way, right? The earrings, I don't think it works that way. But yeah, that's a good point, right? He has to be able to give himself over to that in a way that is really profound and like scary and like weirdly intimate, and not in like that fanficky kind of way. Which, if that's your fanfic, do you? But
And then of all people, it's Goku.
and of all people with Goku, right? Like I hate that dude. He's always showing me up, and yet at parts of the series, at very important parts, they've become the same person and like melded in a weird way. Yeah. And in some ways, he's been the dominant or non-dominant partner in that fusion too, which is an interesting component of like, what does that mean? You know? Protector, why? Why you do this? Okay.
Ray!
Too hot.
Really? You're killing me. Okay, so we've got sort of the understand piece. One of the things I would add to this, we won't need this in a minute, so it'll be fine. But another way I would put forward to understand this is he's defining himself by relationships that aren't useful anymore, right? I'm still concerned about my father who died, my whole planet of dead friends, right? That worked for a while, but many years down the line, if you're still telling yourself I'm the Prince of all Saiyans and I have to be the greatest that ever was, that just becomes problematic for you after a time, right? Now, you could choose to do things like define yourself by who your family relationships are. I have a wife, kind of. I guess they're married, technically. I don't know. I have a wife, I have children, I have a rival, I have a home planet, right? Those are very positive things to identify yourself with, which might make a huge difference. And I think that's maybe something that we can look at. And I think it doesn't need to happen over the course of the series. What would you want to see? So the cheating part of this is that Dragon Ball Z and Super have been on forever, so we've seen this personal growth, right? But what would you want to see happen based on the things we've talked about? What would be good for him? How can he change? Go for it.
Calm down the anger, just...
Yeah, right? Like, breathe in, deep breaths, don't be so angry all the time. It's okay.
Coping skills.
Coping skills.
Self-soothing.
Yeah, learning the ability to do that, right? Because I don't know, what if like God tells your wife her pudding isn't very good and you're like, I'm gonna kill him. Right? Maybe back that off. There are situations where anger isn't the best, right? But yeah, coping skills. Also, feel other emotions, please. You know, like, it's okay to be sad if your rival surpasses you. Now you should get back on the horse and like continue training, right? But like, it's okay to have other emotions, Vegeta. Even if anger is your favorite one. That sounds really intense over there. County, like they're working out. And I'm like, you're in an anime convention. What are we doing?
They had anime Zumba yesterday.
Yeah, that's what we were doing yesterday too. Other things you might want to see. I'm gonna go ahead and put parenting on that list. Like I would like to see him have a heart-to-heart chat with his son and daughter when they get old enough.
Maybe name them better names in the future.
Maybe give them better names in the future. Although I think I would blame Bulma for that one because like the naming convention, her dad is Dr. Brief, hers is Bulma, Trunks, another underwear thing.
Bra.
Bra was the GT version, but I think they changed her name in Super. Maybe I'm wrong. Did they? Yeah. Which is fun. It's a fun naming convention, and that's like a Toriyama thing. But yeah, right? Give your children something normal, please. To do that.
That could show a lack of parenting for him. Then it's like you just name the kids, you take care of the kids. That's fine.
Like showing him doing anything with his children would be wonderful, other than throwing them in a time chamber and beating them until they get stronger. It's okay. It's an anime. It's fine. It's not like child abuse, kind of. But yeah, right. Like doing things a little differently. Maybe having one of those like fun, goofy side projects where it's like Vegeta, stay out, right? Like that'd be amusing, right? Both your children can fly. Managing children that can fly is probably very difficult, I would imagine. That would be amusing.
They did that. They learned to drive.
Learn to drive, that's what it was. I was thinking about it. I was like, I think it was a side episode where like they try to teach them normal human life skills.
And they were completely inept at it.
And they're completely inept at it, yeah. The Dragon Ball universe is so weird. Like, they can fly, and yet they're like, drive this car, be a normal person. Like, what? If my husband could fly, I would be like, honey, you fly.
We have dinosaurs and clouds. You can
Right.
ride.
Wear less loud clothing in the future. Maybe would be a note that I would give Vegeta. The mustache was nice, though. I like the mustache. Keep that.
Maybe take up a new hobby besides beating everything.
Yeah, maybe a nice hobby. Like you could be the best knitter on earth. Right? Like, it's a little stabby. They got the needles, but like it's, you know, you could do like find other ways to express yourself that maybe aren't like fight with a world-ending, you know, threat. Because eventually you might want the world-ending threats to stop, so you can like raise your children and have a good time, and you know, have a barbecue every once in a while. You know, yeah. Any more data to do for Vegeta before we go on to like it's free for all? All right. So now is the part of the show where this goes free for all. So I've done some things that you might find interesting to talk about. And some of them you hate me now because I put this on here, but joke's on you, it's my panel and I do what I want. It's our panel. I made the presentation. So Taiga from Toradora I put on there. I did not talk about her because, you know, we already talked about one Toradora character and that would be unfair. But these are ideas, but if you have your own ideas for characters, we'll just do the same thing we did for Vegeta for any character that you want to talk about. Esoteric or not, as long as it's probably not super perverse, because like family friendly-ish. Yeah.
What about
right?
that?
So I'll leave those up there. Also, the chick from Watamote is one that I like talking about occasionally. Also Sasuke, because you have a lot of material, right? But these are the 3 points that we're going to talk about. So anyone have a thought of what they want to talk about? Go for it.
You keep gravitation.
Hunter x Hunter.
Say again?
Kurapika from Hunter x Hunter.
Okay, I have not seen that. So give me the rundown. Who is this character? What do they do?
He is the last of his clan because an evil guy
Seems like he's got
killed
some
all
kind
his
of
family to
thing
save
going
their
on.
eyes because they're valuable.
I hate when that happens.
No, what's the old guy's name from Gravitation?
Yuki.
That's about it.
He smokes and he drinks
He's sad.
all the time.
He's sad. Well, that sounds like an appropriate reaction,
Well, yeah,
considering your
but
family got all
like,
the dead and
there's
nice.
different-
That's like that's a
I
very
know.
And angry,
slowly
also
like-
an appropriate response. Especially the person who killed your family and stole their eyeballs is still alive. I mean, you might want to be angry at that.
He's
It's a
trying to
very
get strong
tropey
for
thing that
revenge.
they do.
Okay, yeah, so there we
It's
go.
not
He's
very
trying to get strong for
second-
revenge. Yeah,
It's a
makes sense.
boy little
The
background.
point of doing that is to make
True.
a secret power that cuts down his lifespan so he can kill them.
Ooh. Okay, so like, before you embark on the trail of vengeance, dig 2 graves kind of situation? I like it, but like literal. Okay. What kind of stuff does he do? Like, other than like cut down his own lifespan to try to murder people? Probably, appropriately.
The last panel, I was like,
Only 15 episodes of the investigation. Not a lot of material. He's not a character.
Yeah, I just like.
They don't even say this. I wish they just don't.
Okay, yeah. So
Right.
he like severs his connection.
There's got.
to,
I mean,
like,
there's definitely
go
like depression
seek out
there or
the
something.
people he needs vengeance against.
Just
too,
being
right?
a trope.
Oh, and he works for a crime lord who is collecting eyes, so he can steal the eyes back.
Oh, okay. So he even like works negatively to like get his own needs met, right? Okay, that's interesting.
He has an issue with being too independent to where, like, when he does need help, he won't ask for it.
Okay, so won't ask for help is ferociously independent, some might say. Yeah. So how do we understand that? What is a character that a person that does that? What are they about? What are they doing?
Self-destruction.
Right? So they're on a path of self-destruction, right? That seems fairly obvious, right? Literally killing himself, or at least in the future killing himself. Literally. Yeah.
So like she mentioned cutting all ties with his friends and all that stuff to go on his vengeance, but that's something that suicidal people actually do. They'll like say goodbye before they succeed, and since he's basically going on a suicidal mission to kill people, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, there's this sense that comes up in this character of a need for self-destruction, a need for there is something wrong inside of me. I've been getting a message from the world around me that there is something so wrong and vile about me that the only thing good about me is my eyes, and everyone's going to go ahead and try and take from me. So I need to destroy, and I don't just need to destroy everything else, I also need to destroy myself.
Yeah, or at least the thing worth destroying is worth destroying myself over too, which I think is an important one. Because that like maybe doesn't give you the amount of worth that you actually have, right? Because it sounds like he has friends, right? Or would. Maybe people actually like him and don't want him to die. I know this is a hard thing to think about. But yeah, go for it.
Violet Evergarden?
Character?
Yeah, Violet
Oh,
Evergarden from Violet Evergarden.
Hold that thought for a second. Let's get to the last point on this one. So what would you want this character to do? What do you want to be different? Because we understand like a little bit of what's going on. What do you want to do?
Have a goal besides revenge.
Right. So have a goal besides revenge. That might be useful.
Any idea what kind of goal that might be? What kind of goal would you like to set there?
Because the problem with him only having a goal for revenge is that once he gets it, he's gonna feel really empty, and if he makes it through his revenge is still intact and he's still all tied to it with his friends, what's he gonna do? So I would like to see him like kind of reconnect with his friends, kind of have goals to like better himself without pieces of he's gonna kill him.
Seeing connection through community, building that collective, that togetherness that helps kind of stave off a lot of that sadness.
For help.
Yeah, but I think your point of like if he achieves his goal, what will happen is a very valid one, right? Because he's clearly expecting to die, or at least like to get as near as with achieving the goal. But the thing is, after you succeed and you have nothing left, and you have no friends and you have no connections, mission accomplished. What do you do? And that's an important one, right? Like if you've done the thing you set out to do, you're going to need something new. And I think it sounds like the fear is that he won't find something new. That it's like game over. I don't have anything left to live for. Yeah, which is tough. Right? You don't want to see that necessarily. Any other thoughts before we move on to the next one? All right, so tell me, name of character. What is a character from?
Violet Evergarden from Violet Evergarden.
Okay,
You just
self-titled,
happened to
okay.
see that.
Okay, yeah. So tell me a little bit about it.
Basically, she's an emotionless puppet at the very beginning of it.
Okay.
She's just gone through a traumatic experience. She's lost both of her arms. She is not even being told that the person that was her commanding officer is dead, that he's just away on a trip, and you're just gonna come do this while you wait for him because he's busy. And basically she's like, wants to figure out what the last thing he said to her is. What is love? I don't understand this, because she starts out as kind of an emotionless puppet.
Is this the one where she's learning how to read? Right.
Learning how to write letters.
Yeah,
and then
that's
the
what it
whole anime is her
Yeah, I've
learning
seen
what
it.
love is.
I've heard about this, yeah. I haven't seen it, but yeah.
Oh my god, watch it.
Yeah, I'm going to.
You will
Love it.
cry.
So like, trauma
trauma.
No emotion.
She starts out as emotionless, goes through a traumatic experience, and basically spends the anime trying to figure out what love is, and everyone hiding that her commanding officer is dead. She finds out he is dead and loses it. She loses it.
Which seems predictable, right? You spend the whole
Yeah.
time telling her, like, no, it's fine,
Yeah.
it's good.
At one point, she's like, I want to write him a letter. I wrote him a letter. Okay, I'll deliver the letter. Takes the letter. Yeah, eventually somebody lets slip that he's dead, and she flips it. And you're fully aware that he's dead, so it's not like I'm terribly spoiling it.
Right.
And then she's also dealing with the fact that she lost both of her arms, and she's having to be, every time she takes off her gloves, everyone's just like, the entire country just got done with a horribly large turmoil of the war, and they all know why she lost her arms, so...
Right, yeah, I think that's probably a big one, too, of like,
So-
everybody around you is dealing with the post.
Everyone sees,
Whatever.
and a lot of the letters is, at one point she writes a letter for a dying soldier as he's dying.
Oh,
Like,
that's lovely.
let me give you what I want to say. Okay, let me write it nicely for you.
Yeah.
And then she's emotionally detached from everybody.
Yeah, which I would imagine is useful in some of those situations, right? Like, there's a reason why people in our profession or people in medical professions get taught, you gotta be back here a little bit.
Yeah, it's often the case with trauma, with any kind of severe element that comes up like that. There's a big dissociative factor that can come in a lot of times. Dissociation from, I'm not going to plug into my environment, I'm not going to plug into people, and I'm just going to be a little bump on the wall and just go ahead and let things pass through and go on autopilot.
Yeah.
She also has a large desperation to find a job that she can do. She wants to do work, and she wants somebody else to tell her what to do.
Yeah, which I have to imagine, like, she was in the military or like.
She was
adjacent to?
kind of like a gunslinger girl style character, where it's
Okay,
just
yeah.
like, I'm an emotionless puppet, tell me what to do, I will take out the entire thing. Okay, I'm done.
Right, but then you need someone to tell you what to do, because like.
Otherwise she's
when
like-
you get out, what do you?
Yeah, she's
You don't
pretty-
have any ability to choose for yourself, or you aren't used to it, right? Which happens in real life too. There's people that exit the military that immediately go to jobs that are highly structured, that are, you know.
How can we understand that with this character? How can we understand the purpose behind this need to not have agency over her own decisions or her own actions, but that agency elsewhere beyond her? Any thoughts on how we can understand that a little bit?
I think a lot of it has to do with, they don't give her a lot of backstory as to why she is an emotionalist puppet, but she doesn't think for herself at all. She was given to her commanding officer as a war dog. It's like, here, it's a pet.
That's problematic.
His brother gave him the Violet, and he basically said, don't name her, use her to kill people. I found this for you, you use her to kill people, and she'll go and kill people for you.
Well, that's useful. Like, don't name them, don't give them a sense of self, don't let
It's-
them have a self.
It's almost like a Henrietta Jose from Gunslinger Girl relationship between the two of them. And he's like, this isn't right. You can be a person, and trying to give her humanity, and she's like, I'll just kill things for you, anything to kill things for you, protect you, and what do you want me to do?
Yeah. That definitely has a feel to me too of like, one of the ways you get somebody to be able to do those kind of actions is by making them not think about it, by making them not feel it. Like, that's the reason why you get in a lot of like wartime situations and there's propaganda. Like, the Nazis are these bad people, they look like this, they're monsters, it's okay to kill them. Now, they don't necessarily always tell you that, but it's a psychological trick to make it easier, right? Or to make you, they beat that out of you. Don't think about it. Pull trigger, that's it. But yeah, like, that's the only way you can get somebody to mass murder some people like that.
One of the things that's interesting about this character, as opposed to some of the others that we've been talking about, is some of the other characters that we've been talking about, is this very self-centered action. A lot of it is all around what's best for them, what they want for themselves. But this character, the big thing that I'm hearing is a lot more of, okay, I'm going to serve the needs of what's around me. Tell me what's needed around me, and I'm going to do all of that. And so it's this interesting switch from how part of getting into that third question of what do we do, where before we were talking a lot more about building emotional connection and doing and these community connections. Well, it sounds like this character does need that. It sounds a lot more like this character really needs a lot of internal time, some time to be able to find themselves, build that sense of self, and ground that sense of self, and then be able to become a relational person and understand how she relates herself with all of these people instead of just identifying with the world around her.
And a lot of the anime does explore her trying to actually become a person. Like, kind of gloss over that and like, hey, she's actually spends a lot of the anime trying to go, what is love? What is feelings? What is actually being a person? Which is very nice. It's almost like Gunslinger Girls trying to become human.
And you start to see that sense of self start to come out, start to figure out, all right, what is this experience of being human, and how do I find out who I am?
Yeah, and I was even thinking like put her in a situation that encourages that connection, and like where the demands of the situation are that you feel closer to that. Not necessarily to tell her it's a bad thing that she is the way she is, but like whereas a military situation is the situation of, okay, well, be like this. If she gets put in a different thing and the directive is to be different, maybe that would make a difference.
One of the people she meets when she like goes first starting to write letters and goes to class work and everything. At first she's really careful of her. This classmate, her brother is actually also a veteran, so she kind of gets the vibe a little bit more dealing with that.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good call out to say, find people that understand, or that at least be more inclined to understand. Because there might be people in that post-war situation that don't want to talk to you and don't want to think about it, right? But there will be people, I have a loved one that was like this, or I lost a loved one, or things like that, that might be inclined to kind of give you that guidance, to give you some help, and teach you other ways of being, because she doesn't know any other ways to be, right? Yeah. Any other thought of like the third piece here, or do we want to start another one? So we got 15 minutes, so a little more than that. But anyone have another character they would like to go out? Go for it.
Hachiman from Yahari.
Say again?
Hachiman from Yahari.
Okay, so tell me more about this character.
He's this sort of isolated loner character.
Uh-huh.
He is constantly reliving this handful of past social traumas.
Okay.
And so he's constantly trying to avoid any sort of social interaction. Anything, he's always trying to get out. He's very cowardly on his way of getting out. He's always grumbling. And he also has this way of looking into cliques, and he always sees them in this incredible negative fashion. Like, he sees them as these hierarchies of oppression. And he even hates cliques that he would be a part of, like a nerd clique. He still views that in that same way.
Okay, so like any social group is
Yeah,
negative.
any
Like
social
socialization is
Yeah.
negative. Okay. How do you understand that? Like, what does that sound like or feel like?
Sounds like trauma.
Yeah, do we know the nature of the traumas?
Basically, like asking someone for their number and then giving them the wrong number. Him messing up and getting made fun of for a day. It's all really minor traumas.
Yeah, but it sounds like a lot of them.
Yeah.
Right, those everyday kind of slights,
Yeah.
those everyday
Constant state of rejection, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I can see that piece of like, if you're constantly being rejected, the way to avoid that is to not put yourself out there. Is to not be in a situation where you're gonna be rejected, right? To like protect yourself with that armor of, I am not a person that is with people. Because if I'm with people, I get hurt.
Those traumas being constantly present, that's the state of trauma. Trauma is constantly present with those that carry it. And so this figure that's constantly carrying this sense of constant rejection, it's very strongly used. It's a sense that really comes up and says, the world says that there is something wrong with you. And no matter what you do, no matter what you try, you're going to be rejected and not accepted by the world. And so there's a lot of mourning and loss that comes with that. There's this sense of isolation that comes with that. And so, how do we understand where his actions come from that defend him from that? How does he defend himself from not being told that he's terrible? Well, he disconnects from the possibility of anybody. Then he's not told that he's shameful. Then he can just go ahead and live in his own fantasy world himself and make it whatever he wants.
Yeah, I also think it's interesting that he sees those social things as oppression. Like everyone suffers under them is sort of the implicit other side of that argument. Like if social structures are bad and they hurt people, like they hurt me, that means other people are being hurt too. Which is interesting because it implies sort of a care,
Yeah.
but it is maybe self-focused of like, they hurt me so I don't like them. But there's maybe like buried really deep in there this idea that this system doesn't work for other people too. And there might be a way to have connection around that, right? Because we see this in real life all the time. Marginalized groups that get together and say, we have a connection despite the fact that society doesn't like us, right? You're at one right now, right? Like, not that people don't like anime people, but like, anyone been an anime fan for greater than like 10 years? Was it always this easy? There didn't used to be Netflix. There didn't used to be services that you could purchase that would stream them right to you, right? Like, the story of A-Kon getting started was people passing around VHS tapes and like fan subbing stuff. Like, dang, right? Like, but yeah, that idea of like, there's an implied want of connection there, even though we're very definitely not connected to that, or that person is not connected. Which is an interesting, like, weird depth piece there, which I hadn't thought about. So what would you want to see happen as the person before him? What would you want him to do?
I don't know. That's what's difficult because he refuses to get in these social situations. And when people try to reach out to him, he always hardens up. So it almost seems like it's impossible for him to get out.
Yeah, but hypothetically, were it possible, maybe it's something to think about. Go here and then here. Is that good?
He needs like one really persistent person to try to break through this shell.
Yeah.
Have some type of connection. One person that like even if he started and doesn't want to, be like, okay, not all social connections are bad.
Yeah, right? Have that one person who is just stubborn enough, who is just persistent enough to like get through it, right? And that does feel important. And like a lot of times in other animes, maybe not this one particularly, but you'll see characters who are not very sociable find like that one person. I'm thinking Shishomaru from Inuyasha. Like, oh, there's this one person that's going to be around who's going to like sort of push him a different direction. So yeah, maybe that could be
I would think that he needs to find somebody that's going to like kind of teach him the discipline to how to like be social to people, and then he'd have to have like those couple of good experiences, and then be able to focus on those good experiences so he wouldn't focus so much on the negative experiences he had in the past.
One thing that can really help in being able to set a foundation of being able to do that comes to being able to process some of those past traumas. Being able to sit with someone that can empathize with those past traumas that have happened. Being able to let that come out, let it be heard, and then still be accepted for that. That models that connection, that models that situation, to be able to set that aside as okay, and accept those past experiences, and then go ahead and be able to start creating new experiences. Otherwise, if that past trauma isn't heard, then there's no recognition, there's no ability to mourn, there's no ability to go ahead and actually mourn what's happened. And until it's mourned and that sorrow is passed on, it keeps on carrying it in the backpack. It keeps on carrying it around. And so then once you can sit with someone, be able to meet someone that's able to empathize with them, see that trauma, see that through, then all of a sudden things open up and you can be able to start having those new experiences with the new facade.
Yeah, and I think part of that hope is that the new experiences build that foundation that shows you that it's possible. Because the last thing you want is to be like, go have new experiences and then that'd be bad, right? Which can happen. It happens in therapy all the time, right? But putting them in those safe spaces and then say, okay, look at how reality can be different. Because your reality doesn't look like this all the time. And it could be different. Now, whether they want to change it or not, sometimes they don't. But yeah, I like that idea too. Like, build that up. And I work with social isolation a lot, and a lot of it is, how do I have a positive experience, right? How do I put this all together and get shown that it's not scary, that it's not bad, right? Because a lot of times people only have those experiences or only pay attention to those experiences.
So a big thread that we have really kept coming to with all of these characters, and the big thread that's really in each of them is this theme of acceptance. Coming to a place of acceptance of past occurrences, of past traumas, of past things. Coming to an acceptance of one's own state and one's own self. If one has lost their arms and is having to relearn and readapt to a situation, being able to come to a place of acceptance of the now, of the past, and then being able to recreate a new future through that lens of acceptance. So that as things come up, as more things get triggered, as more things pop in the way, in the view of just having an experience, to be able to accept and continue to go forward. And so a theme of acceptance is a real key piece to both understanding all these characters, treating all these characters, and then all these characters being able to have a more fulfilling life going forward.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe part of that is like the characters we talked about and the input you all have given, right? That feels like that says some things about the people in this room. I think it also probably says something about us personally too, because we both kind of have that orientation towards our work. But yeah, and I think part of the goal of this exercise too is to say that when you're talking about specific things, you're also talking about general things, right? And you can get that thing of like, well, really, we're talking about all anime, like la 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 moment, but like what we're talking about is like human experiences, right? What it means to be a person, how you deal with that. And just because the characters are fictional doesn't make it any less valid, right? They're written by human people. They come from human stories. They affect us as humans, right? And the idea here is like, what I want this to be is a situation where we can talk about that in that way, because this can reach people that aren't the people that watch the same shows you've watched, right? And part of the reason of putting it together that way is when the next time you say like, oh, hey, have you seen this show? And they say no, that conversation doesn't end. You can then say, okay, let me tell you. Because if you frame it the right way, you'll be able to have this conversation with just about anybody. Now, of course, they'd have to want to sit and talk with you, which like maybe they wouldn't, right? But if you do this and set it up the correct way, or a way that works for people, the idea is we're going to open more conversations than we close. Because I can't tell you how many times I've been in a convention and they're like, oh man, have you seen this show? No. Oh. Well, you should watch it. Right? But this, like, we talked about these characters for shows that none of us have ever seen. Almost every one that you all shared, neither of us have seen them, right? And we had actually good, useful conversation, right? And this can be anybody. I swear, I was at a convention in Louisiana, and there was a guy with one of those like hentai shirts, and he like went on about the meaning of human existence, and I was like, wow, that guy? I like it, you know. So you can have this conversation, even with that person that you maybe don't want to have it with. But the 3 points here, these are the things we want you to think about here. Because if you do this and you come up with these 3 points and you keep these in mind when you're telling people these, you can cultivate that conversation. They say, okay, I've never heard of it. You're like, okay, let me tell you what it's about. And then ask them how they understand what you just told them. Because they might have a very different view from you. When I came in and I say, like, I prepped these, be ready for someone to say something you've never thought about before and like get to that point of that conversation. And then also, what do you want to do with that? And that can be psychological, as we've done. It can be, what would you want the show to do next? It could be, I want an episode that does this, right? I want an OVA that does this thing, right? It can be anything. But we have like 5 minutes here. I'm going to go to my last thing here. We can just do general questions or thoughts or concerns or feedback. One thing I'm always interested in is, given a psychological point of view and like kind of the stuff we've talked about here, what would be other things you would want to see done at panels and conventions, right? Because the only reason Sean and I get to be here is because of you all, because people show up to it. And we want to do things that people want to show up for. Mostly because it gets free passes at the anime conventions, but also because there's a lot of material out there. And like mental health is something we don't always talk about. You know, people's deep down inside beliefs are things we don't always talk about. So, any of that, or if you feel like you're out of here, that's also great. That is my personal email out there. You can email me if you have questions or thoughts or anything like that. We'd love to talk to you. If we see you around, that'd be great. But otherwise, thanks for being here, guys. Really appreciate it.